we go. Yay. Okay. Hello, and welcome to the 15th in our 16-week series of audio-enabled EDA STEP workshop sessions. We're delighted you're here. My name is Annette, and I'm in full recovery from an eating disorder. Before we get started, a few caveats. This session of the EDA STEP workshop is being recorded. We hope to make audio recordings of the workshop accessible to everyone. Please note that these audio recordings will not be available on the EDA website until they've gone through the full vetting process. We will, however, be sending information about the recordings to the GSB email distribution list. If you're not currently on the list, please drop a line to info@eatingdisordersanonymous.org and we'll get you added. Reminder, listening to a recording is not a substitute for attending EDA meetings or working the steps. We encourage you to check out our meetings pages, which include face-to-face, online, and teleconference meetings. Just like what you might find at an EDA group, what you're about to hear reflects experiences and opinions of individual EDA members that may or may not tally with your own. Please take what you can use and leave the rest. You do not need a sponsor to attend this workshop. We will all be working the steps of EDA together, myself included. To make things easier for everyone, we've muted everybody as they join. If you'd like to be heard, please unmute your phone by using the *6 or Alt-A if you're on a computer. You can also mute or unmute using the same key combination. Last week, in EDA Workshop Session 14, Nuria, Leslie, Michelle, Emily, Dev, Bonnie, and myself, as well as a few others, discussed how steps 10, 11, and 12 work together to help us grow into people we trust and respect. We discussed specific examples of how step 10 can save the day and transform how we respond to life. We reflected on EDA Big Book, pages 186 through 192, 498, and 517 to 521. A panel of sponsors addressed questions sponsees have asked. Tonight we'll discuss how step 10 leads into step 11. We'll talk about the EDA Big Book content from 192 through 198, and actually I think, yeah, that could be a little bit different from what I thought. Yeah, 192 to 198. We'll reflect on our personal experiences with the step. We'll have another panel of sponsors address questions that sponsees ask, and we'll commit to take step 11 together. We'll then review assignments for next week. Right now, I'd like to ask if anyone on the call who sponsors others in EDA is willing to identify yourself so we may call on you during the question and answer session. Identifying yourself as a sponsor does not imply that you're currently accepting new sponsees. However, if you are, that would be great to mention. So please just tell us your first name and where you're from. I'll start. My name is Annette. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm in full recovery from an eating disorder.
I'm Gisele. I am in full recovery. I sponsor, and I'm in Maricopa.
Hi, this is Leslie. I'm in New York, and I'm in recovery from an eating disorder, and I sponsor.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Leslie. Thanks.
Welcome.
Alrighty then. So we're going to go ahead and for some reason Numlock seems to be coming on for me here. It doesn't seem like.
Oh, hi, Annette.
Display wants to. Yeah. Hey.
Hey, sorry, I totally did an introduction to no one. This is Emily, and I'm in Phoenix. And
hi, Emily.
Yeah, and I'm in recovery. Nice to talk to you.
Super. Thanks so much for doing that. Okay, so we've already talked about the agenda a little bit, so we're going to launch right into the reflections. So, Gisele, you want to start us off?
Sure. Let's see. Hi, I'm Gisele, and I actually like this step because I can use it all the time, just like step 10, and it's step 10 kind of gives us perspective on you know, what we're kind of focusing on, you know, good and bad, and step 11 for me gives me strength and gives me strength throughout the day, because for me myself, I need reminding a lot, because I can really tend to focus on the negative really easy. And so for me, step 11, I can start it off in the morning, or I can continue throughout the day. When I screw up throughout the day, something that I do on a personal is I have a lot of affirmations that I've gained from different therapies or different groups I've been in. And so, you know, a lot of times in the morning before I go to work, I can have the affirmations, and I can it just sets me into a different place, and I can take one of my affirmations, for me, it brings me to a place where I am no better than, I am no worse than any person, place, or thing. And it helps with one of my character defects of like ego and pride. And that's what I found for me is I found something that will help me with my character defects. And so I can set myself up in the morning to have a clear focus on what I want to achieve for the day, and that's just helping other people. And if I don't set myself up right, I get numb, because there's a lot of energy from people, and I can get pretty numb, and I don't want to get there, because then I don't gain positivity from people's energy. But I don't know. I like step 11, and it's not something that we have to worry about so hard. It doesn't have to be something hard. You know, I think people get stuck sometimes where it has to be something perfect, because not everybody comes from any kind of spiritual background or religious, or if they do, people think sometimes they have to do it in a certain way, and it has to be done right, and it's not that way at all. It's whatever I find that works for me, whether it's an affirmation, whether it's, you know, a saying, whether it's a prayer. They have the prayer in here. And I like in our EDA book that we changed the St. Francis, not change, but the prayer for St. Francis, and we did an alternative statement, and I like that. And that's something that I can focus on. You know, if there's just a couple of sentences from that, I can take and focus on whatever. And it talks about in this step that whatever works for you, and find that whatever works for you to get you to that place where you feel you have an outer power within, if that makes sense, to do what you're supposed to be doing throughout the day. And that, for me, that's just wherever I can be of assistance, wherever I can put in a positive mode, wherever I can make somebody laugh, or wherever I can, you know, just bring joy to somebody. You know, I was talking to my daughter before this meeting, and she's doing that without even knowing what she's doing. And it's awesome, because that's the way we should be on a regular, but because of this disease, or you know, my character defects or whatever, I'm not doing it, but she's doing it just normal. You know, she's helping this little old lady that lives beneath her at the apartment complex, and she's just helping her. You know, can you unlock my door? My hand, you know, she's got arthritis. You know, can you carry this for me? You know, and they talk for a minute. She gives her time for a minute, and that's it. And it's like she just does these things normally, and it puts her in a good positive space, and it helps this old lady. And it's like, it's just, I get amazed. But I myself, I got into this negative space because I don't do these things. I didn't do these things. You know, didn't come natural to me. And and so I had to work on it, and I like the way it feels. You know, it's just those simple things, and I find that if I can just get out of myself a little bit, and, you know, say these affirmations and focus on something outside of me, I can just get through my day a whole lot better. When my character defects get in the way, I can just, you know, say my affirmation again, and let my ego down, and not be so negative on myself when I screw up, or when I'm doing something, you know, that I don't think I should be doing, or feeling the way I should be feeling because, you know, I'm human. And it's okay to screw up. And I never allowed myself that in the past. And that's what this step can help with is allowing myself to be human. There is no perfect way to do this thing. And there's just try. And there's try again. And then there's try again. And it's okay. And so, I don't know. That's what I got out of this, if that makes any sense. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass, and we'll go.
Sure. So thanks so much, Gisele. I always find it inspirational just to watch you do and be, because, you know, I know that it's a challenge, and like it is for all of us, and it's humbling to watch this in action. It just is. So for me, I do really like the readings, and I do relate to this. So it is kind of challenging as somebody that doesn't have such a strong spiritual connection to want to, you know, to seek through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as I understand Him, praying only for knowledge of God's will for me and the power to carry that out. Man, you know what? As an atheist, that's just not an easy order. You know? But I love that it does suggest that that one way to look at this is that on page 192, it talks about we earnestly and consciously seek to understand and do whatever is best to serve our God or higher purpose every day. When we take care of our basic needs and place ourselves in service to our higher power or higher purpose, we gain peace and perspective that is needed for recovery. So step 11 really does challenge everybody, religious, spiritual, agnostic, and atheist, to push past our limitations and get into action. It prepares us to face the day with renewed commitment and resolve to do our best as we strive to be of cheerful service to those around us and to God, our higher power, or the greater good, whatever that may be for us. Well, there's no one right way to do this. We've found that a daily discipline is worth the effort. Each day when we go about thinking about the 24 hours ahead, we can consider goals that we had listed when we did our 10th step inventory. So, and again, those are goals. I really want us to think about, you know, for me, it helps just to think about what will make me proud to be a human. What will make me feel like I've got dignity and integrity, and reflect positively on an interaction that I might not have automatically gone to. So that's really a part of step 10. So when we think about putting that into action, we can think about how the attitude we might take into something can positively or negatively affect how we do. And, you know, that just makes such a big difference. Those of us who practice a particular faith or religion often find themselves able to connect more strongly than ever to the ideas that they trust, and it feels like familiar and comfortable and powerful without ever really engaging that ego part. As a result of working the steps, which allow us to sweep away the debris that have been blocking us, we're able to finally live according to whatever principles and faiths we may have had, and which we knew all along were right for us. And those of us who didn't come from a tradition or practice of faith don't have to find step 11 especially problematic. God in EDA literature can mean the deity, a spiritual entity of one's own understanding, like a higher power, or a non-spiritual conception, a higher purpose. All we need to do is remember that reliance on any one of these can confer a piece of perspective and a peace of mind that puts things in context and allows us to carry on with what really matters. So no matter what ideas we start with, step 11 does remind us that we derive the power of perspective from focusing on something or someone greater than ourselves. Some of us simply care for ourselves so we can be free to turn our attention to causes that really matter to us. Some of us understand God as the power of love. Some of us find joy and peace through recognizing and dedicating our lives to God as we understand Him from the Bible, Torah, or Quran. Others of us leverage Eastern meditation practices, building on every effort to love, honor, and respect ourselves because we believe that God lives within us as us. Perceiving of ourselves as beings of love, we find meaning and joy in bringing that sacred gift to everyone we meet and everything we do. Taking this position frees us to care for ourselves and others with great kindness, compassion, and dignity. Step 11 encourages us to start with whatever conceptions we trust and work mindfully and deliberately to explore how we can empower these ideas in our day-to-day lives. Step 10 helps us establish integrity. We learn to be true to ourselves through our daily inventory. Step 11 then helps us establish and grow our relationships of trust, whether we start with trust in God, in the power of love, or in the ideas that we can organize our time and energy to serve a purpose about which we care deeply. So, and I'm trying to page through my PowerPoint deck here without a whole lot of a success. But I really do think that this is a very empowering and emboldening step. If we can take this as people that may come to this thinking like, oh my gosh, Mother Teresa, that's not for me, like I did, because honestly, when I first read Step 11 and the prayer of St. Francis, I was like, well, that's all really nice. It sounds lovely. And there's no way in heck that's ever going to really have a lot of traction in my life. And really for a long time that was true. And, what I have to do is remember that this is an intention. It's not necessarily every interaction is one in which I'm going to be some kind of like bundle of joy and spirited energy that inspires all whom I come into contact with. That's not the case. Let me just talk to my husband, really. It's like Jesus. I'm sure he thinks I'm like, especially this week, I've just been hand-wringing, anxious wreck. So it's not anything like perfection, but Step 11 reminds me that this is just a moment in time, and I'm super happy and delighted to be connected to you guys, to everybody that I meet in my life. It's like when I look in somebody's eyes and I see that spark of life and that recognition that yes, we're human, and yes, we're trying to attain common goals, because we are, we're all out there trying to make life just a little better for everybody, and I respect everybody for their efforts and what they're trying to do to contribute to that, joint enterprise that is humanity. It's kind of funny when I step back and I think, I'm just here for this little blip in time. My daily drama tends to decrease a lot, and I think more about like what really is going to carry on after me, because that's what really matters in the long run. It's how I treat people. It's how I respect them for what they do and what they bring to the party, and that's not so hard. Like I know earlier I was talking about, when I see bumper stickers that make me mad, I just want to ram that car. Well, that is my knee-jerk impulse, okay? But I mean, really, honestly, having had that awareness and going like, ooh, ick, that made it possible for me to actually think, with joy and with gratitude for the people that I have in my life who don't share my opinions. We don't ever get to something that feels fair to everybody if we don't have disagreement. So I'm really grateful for Step 11. It brings peace and perspective into my life, even though the whole God stuff still just like, I still struggle with that concept. A little. I mean, I'm really just fine with it at so many levels, but when I read it and I think there's still that knee-jerk impulse, just like ramming the car with a bumper sticker, but I'm really grateful that today I have a perspective that allows me to laugh at it. So with that, actually, I'd like to invite anybody else to speak about their own experiences with Step 11 to share.
Great. Hi, this is Leslie in
Leslie.
New York City. Hi, Annette. And hi, Gisele and everybody on the call. Thank you very much for your shares. Step 11, my Step 2 really brought me to a new experience of a higher power. And so now with Step 11, there are a couple of ways that I want to share of how I work them today. And one of them is saying grace. And so saying grace was something that my family did, but it was just a rote Catholic prayer that didn't really have a lot of meaning for me. But because when I worked Step 2, I came into this new experience of a higher power as not like some guy sitting on a throne, but as an energy of a coming home to myself, of the greater good, as it says, as the reading that you just read, Annette, that this something greater than me, a higher purpose. I needed to create a new grace for myself. And so I wanted to share that with you all. So that's the two ways that I practice step 11 now in my life are saying grace before I eat, and then also doing the On Awakening reading from the AA Big Book. So I'm going to share both of those with you right now.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. So the grace goes like this: loving Father, Mother, brother, sister, best friend, God, Goddess. Bless this food for the nourishment of our bodies. Let everything we eat turn to health and beauty in our beautiful bodies. Bless all the hands that help bring it to this table. Thank you for the sun, the moon, the rain, the earth, the farmers, any animals that participated in the creation of this meal. And thank you for this time together with all of these people in this moment. May this food be perfectly assimilated, perfectly eliminated, perfectly illuminated. Om Namah Shivaya. Amen.
Love it.
Thank you. So that prayer,
Beautiful.
Thank you. It really, what I love about it is that it brings me into like the present moment, so that I'm there with my food and just really giving, like creating sacred space each time I eat. And I don't use it every time I eat. But I try to, like, that is my intention. And actually, so now that I'm talking right now, I'm going to say, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to use it for every meal tomorrow. Okay. And let's see how that
and it's progress, not perfection, right?
Thank you.
But
Yes,
I love
exactly.
the prayer. I really do. Yeah.
Thank you.
And so
Thanks.
you had another thing that you'd mentioned that you wanted to share.
Thank you. Yes. So I have a practice that was given to me by a grant sponsor, actually, which is it's page 86 through 88 in the AA Big Book, the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. And it's quite long, but I'm just going to read the beginning and the end right now. It goes like this. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not know which course to take. Here, we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it's not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions or ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We're careful not to ask for freedom from self-will. And then as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show. And then at the end, it just says, it works. It really does.
Yes.
So I
appreciate the reading thing.
I call a fellow every day, or she calls me, and we read it out loud to each other, and then we share our plans for the day. And that's like a daily sort of 10th, like 10, 11, 12 kind of. So that's my practice.
Very awesome.
That's wonderful, Leslie. Thanks so much for sharing. And I want to reiterate that the EDA process means sponsors are welcome to use whatever materials have been personally helpful for them. Because again, EDA is not a program in which one person is better than any other. So sponsors carry a torch of their own experience, strength, and hope to others. And we respect the individual autonomy and agency of each person, whether they're in EDA, out of EDA, regardless of age, regardless of manifestation of an eating disorder, regardless of amount or depth or whatever you want to call it of recovery. We're really all equal. I mean, there's not a way in which I feel like I'm better or anybody else is better. It really helps to sort of level the playing field and know, you know what, we're just here to carry that little spark, that light out into the world and to try to help. So whatever works for you is what we're encouraging people to share. We do want sponsors to take people through the steps and encourage people to use whatever works for them. So thank you so much, Leslie, for demonstrating an example of that. That's very cool. I do greatly appreciate it. So is there anybody else that wants to share their own personal experience with step 11, what works for them? Star 6 to unmute.
Hi, this is Maurice. I'd like to share.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Grace.
So I also am not I have a little trouble with the God part. And so I practice a meditation practice that connects me to that higher part of me that I kind of consider the wise woman within, or the intuitive self. And the meditation, on a daily basis is really important to have that connection. So with time and program, I'm gradually learning to trust that connection, which means I'm gradually learning to trust myself. But it's really important for me to try to learn to be present through that meditation practice. When I become unconscious, then I'm not connected. And, I guess that consciousness is what a lot of people would call the God or the higher power. So no matter what, I just keep coming back. And, the meditation practice is not perfect. And no matter what, I just keep coming back. And that's kind of what helps me continue to walk forward. Thanks.
Right on. Thanks so much. That was great. And I believe we had someone else who was willing to share.
Oh, yeah, this is Emily. I'll chime in real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, well, I wanted to share that, there's definitely a connection for me between step 10 and step 11. Well, more than one. But one that I can think of is this idea of flexibility and letting it grow with me as I grow in my own program and continue in my program, because step 11 has changed for me and it continues to change. But I think the most important thing that I've learned is the importance of seeking that contact, whatever that is. And then it says, sought conscious contact with our higher power, our higher purpose. And so it doesn't, I've been told by many people, it doesn't matter how you seek, as long as you're seeking, that's the success, you're doing it. So for me, I definitely have a harder time with meditation, but I've heard from many, many people that it's incredibly fruitful. But I can speak to prayer a lot. I grew up praying when I was a little girl. I was raised religious, and I just didn't have a God. I had a traditional God, but not one that was personal to me. And my prayers were, I don't know, just very different from when I became a conscious adult who had gone through so much and was returning to this idea of praying to something greater than myself. It's very different now. And I just, I didn't have a lot of, I didn't really know what was going to happen when my sponsor asked me to start praying, but I figured why not? At that point, I had just done a lot of things for a long time that this didn't seem, she made it really easy too. She was like a 2-word prayer the whole day. And so from there, I've had spiritual experiences, and not religious, but spiritual, where something I pray about, say if, for example, I had a blockage that I prayed about during the steps when I was working them. I prayed about this resistance I have because I used to pray, and I prayed for the safety of my family, and I lost some of my family members. And so I remember the night that I prayed about that, and I was just like, I don't know how to get past this. You do, great, thanks. Was not really special. And I had an experience after that. And it's not the only one I've ever had. So when I have a sponsee or just a friend in the program, I always encourage them to try prayer, because for me, it's very powerful. I don't doubt it anymore. And it's because of my experiences that I do that. I now look at it as something that I can use for strength when I am completely helpless in every other way. It's so beautiful. It's like, here's a situation where I have absolutely no idea what to do, but I can pretty much always pray, and it pretty much always helps. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that tool in my life. It's very stabilizing, and it helps me sort of return to myself and to a place of calm and hope. So I'll pass.
Thank you, Emily. That was so cool. I love hearing the diversity of our experiences with the step. And I really strongly want to emphasize that anybody can work this. If I can work this step, and I do, and do I get perspective? I do, you know, but, it's nothing that I do exactly resembles in some of the practices that I know that have worked really well for others. And likewise, most of the people I know have things that are distinct and unique to them. And it really is whatever works. So with that, we're going to move on and look at some of our questions from the inventory of things that people have asked me or asked others that are on the call. So here's a few questions. So we're starting with the first one. I'm still feeling empty, like the AA hole in the donut. I wonder what's going to happen to me with all this selfless service. I don't think I'm ready to take this step. Now what? And I'm going to add one more bit that wasn't on that step. The person also was complaining that they felt, but they were commenting that they felt like maybe EDA really pushes that idea of service. And frankly, that's what a lot of us did in just sort of running away from confronting or dealing with the fact that we had a serious mental illness known as an eating disorder. That sometimes we do service, you know, in our efforts to kind of like subvert the fact that we need to actually actively work on recovery. So I want to open that up. So what if you've got a sponsee who's like, I do tons of service already, you know, and I also just don't feel like it's ever delivered for me. I feel like the hole in the donut. Anybody?
Ooh, I'll speak to that real quick. It's Emily.
Cool. Sure, go ahead, Emily.
All right. So I think one thing I want to say is that, especially if you know, just being in these phone call / computer sessions and going over the big book kind of in summary, the EDA big book, one thing that's made very clear to me through all the steps is that being of service or being of service to being my best self, you know, my higher purpose, my higher power, completely includes taking care of my own needs as well. And I think that sometimes it can be a toxic way of getting away from fulfilling our own needs to throw ourselves into serving other people. But I think one thing we learn is that we're never truly of use to anyone, you know, especially to ourselves and to the people in our lives, until we can learn to take care of ourselves, and that has to be a priority. So I don't know, that's something I've been discussing with, you know, some of my friends in program recently, is how service can also mean taking care of your own basic needs and making sure that, you know, you're meeting those needs, and because that's such an important part of staying in recovery. So I'll just share about that, and I'll pass.
Thanks, Emily. And anybody else want to share on that? But that's almost exactly what I would have said. And that is what I've said to sponsees. It's like, nope, you come first. And like children are selfish until they get their basic needs met. It's really not possible to you know, we go through kind of grudgingly being of service, you know, with resentment being of service until our own basic needs are met. If you're feeling resentful and grumpy, you're probably not getting your basic needs met. So you know, to me, that's always like a red flag waving. It's like, hello, I'm full of self-pity. Gosh, my needs aren't getting met. What can I do about that? It's not anybody's job but mine. So, okay. And so, go ahead. Anybody else?
Oh, this is Connie. I just wanted to say something quick on that.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, like, and also a lot of other people in the program that I sometimes speak to that have been very overwhelmed by doing service. Sometimes I feel like doing service for the program, what I try to ask myself is like, does it add to my life and my family or take away? And anything that takes away, then it's not helpful and I don't do it. Like, because my service is to my kids and my family first. And if I'm running around, running meetings and doing all these things and ignoring and neglecting my kids, then that's not healthy. So I feel like for me, that's kind of when people ask me to do things or when I think of service, I just try to ask myself, like, does it hurt my life or does it add to my life? And if it hurts the things that are a priority to me, then I know that I have to say no. I don't know. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm loving hearing that, Connie. That's so cool. Hooray! Balance. It is. Balance is what matters. That's right. Okay, so we're going to move to question 2. Question 2. A spiritual practice sounds great, but when I try it myself, I feel more like I'm doing it wrong and I just get frustrated. What did you do to get more comfortable with spiritual practice? Come on,
This is
folks.
Marissa. I'd like to talk about that.
Hi, Marissa. Yeah.
Hi.
Go for it, Marissa.
One of the things that really helped me was working with a couple of other people in the program. And we spent several months meeting once a week. And each week we would we'd listen to a CD or some sort of program around meditation because we were trying to develop a meditative spiritual practice. So we investigated probably 10 or 15, maybe even 20 different types of meditations. And we got them all out of the library, so no one had to invest any dollars. And we did it as a group. And we each actually developed very different meditation practices, but we explored that in a supportive environment. It made it fun, and it was educational, and it really helped me have the accountability to do it on a regular basis. So that's one thing that worked for me. I'll pass with that one.
Nice. What a fantastic idea. I love it.
I'm thinking that.
Very cool. And how much courage would it take to plop that idea out and then make it happen? You guys rock. Right. So cool to hear that. Anybody else? How'd you get over the impediment to picking up a spiritual practice?
I'll go ahead and share again, if that's okay.
Sure. Go ahead, Emily.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I love what I heard, but I would also add to that by saying try, kind of on as an addendum, I tried everything, but with very little organization. So when it comes to prayer, it's about meeting myself where I'm at. So I tried prayers from the big book. I tried the alternative prayers. I tried just talking. I tried, one word prayers or just taking a deep breath. And these were all okay. These are still all okay. These are still all okay forms of, just communication. I think the most important thing for me is to put something out there, because there are times where I have been in a really bad place and I don't want to reach out. I don't want to connect with anything greater than myself, let alone believe in it in that moment. I don't want to connect and rejoice. But if I can just get my mouth to open and spit something out, please, that to me is a prayer. It's a great prayer, very straightforward. And so that's really, really helped me. And in terms of, I just asked myself, what what can I do? What sounds good to me? And I think that is always a good place to start, as opposed to sometimes what I want to do is go, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? But sometimes a better place for me to start is, what sounds good? What sounds doable? And, I like to write. So sometimes writing is a really good form of like connection for me. And then also if I want to take it really slow in starting something new, I can, gosh, how many times have I been told to meditate for a minute? And I'll be like, no, I'll do 3 minutes. And they're like, no, a minute. Just like starting with something that's actually doable. And then going from there, as opposed to saying, I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes every day, because I'm not going to do that. So that's my experience. I'll pass.
Hi,
Thanks,
this is
Emily.
Leslie.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah, what's something Emily said about meditating for 1 minute. When I started my meditation practice, that's exactly what I did. And I had this cute little clock that I liked. And so I think two things that occur to me are like helping myself with it. So for meditation practice, there are all these apps on that often have free like Calm, and I mean, I guess we're not supposed to use other things, but there are all these apps that are very easy to meditate with. Like they have like graphics and things like that. And, or just getting a timer, like the timer on an iPhone, setting it for 1 minute and then just counting breaths for 1 minute. That's how I started, like 20 years ago. And I couldn't do it for more than a minute, but you know what? It's enough. And like, it's just a pause. It's like pressing the pause button on life. And it's a useful thing. And then the other thought that came to mind is that, faith, it's called having faith, or having like religion is called your faith. And so there's a way to just act as if a higher power cares about us, that we can just see it as an experiment, like experiment with making a prayer. And when experimenting with prayer, I was told to start with things that aren't like really, really super important, but like simple things like getting a parking space, or just, wanting to feel better is actually the most simple prayer. I want to feel better. As someone else said, like 1 or 2 word prayers, like help me, okay, is a very simple prayer. And help me please might be nice, 3 words. That then see and really notice, do I feel a little bit better? And that when I notice that I feel a little better, to really acknowledge that and just say thank you for that. Like, because even tiny adjustments in my mood, like tiny improvements, are an answered prayer for me. And so, and as I acknowledge them, it's giving proof to my faith, so that faith turns into belief. So that's what worked for me early on, just like being an experimenter with the process of hoping, of believing in a power greater than myself.
Right on. Leslie, I adore the empirical approach to faith. That's so cool. Let's try this, she says.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I love it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's really great. Yeah. And for people like me, anything that puts me into like a reflective, meditative, anything. And honestly, I recognize that sometimes if I'm just cleaning something, it can be meditative. It's like I'm focusing on what I'm doing. My mind is not like busy, like, analyzing, probing, criticizing. I'm just focusing on this is getting cleaner. Or, it's like anything that I do that connects me to the earth and helps me like look out and about, because I have a very sedentary indoor kind of a job, and anything that gets me outside and breathing and appreciating light and people and anything that is not like specifically about me, but about connection, is really helpful. And the other thing that I heard, I believe Emily mentioned, is writing. So whenever I'm writing, it does actually bring an adult into play. It's like that unsuspected inner resource, that inner wisdom tends to emerge for me in writing, which is why step 10 is such a powerful practice for somebody that doesn't necessarily connect to this God idea. It's like, yeah, that part of the reading was in fact about connecting with this part of us that actually kind of grows, a working part of the mind, you know, that ability to kind of grow up inside of this, you know, this being that we are. It matters. So, all right, moving on. So here's the next one. Prayer and meditation have never been something I much admire or aspire to doing. I came to EDA because I thought I wasn't going to push the God topic, but here we are at another step that is explicit about seeking a conscious contact with something I don't believe in or trust. How is this ever going to work for me and others like me? Well, anybody want to address that one?
Okay, this is Marissa. I'll go again.
All right, so, go ahead, Marissa.
I totally get that, and I have totally been there in that place. Like, well, I felt like there's no hope because I can't believe this. But I don't know. Somehow, through my practice of meditation, through talking with people and going to meetings and just kind of hanging out in the recovery rooms, I finally came to the realization that I had to find something because what I had wasn't working in my life. And so I became willing to do the act as if thing. And the act as if over time has grown into some strong belief within me that I don't even know what it is. I don't have anything to call it. But the belief that I can recover, I am recovering. And as long as I continue to practice the connection and, to practice the steps, that life goes very well. So it was really, for me, the acceptance that I needed something different. And for me, it was...
Marissa, we just lost you. Yeah. Hello? Marissa? Uh-oh. All right, we may have a connection problem there. Okay, so that's really cool, Marissa, to hear that it's just, it's like practice builds capability, practice builds capacity. And, open minds are, it's like, honestly, we don't have to name things. We don't have to put things in a box, like Gisele always says. It can be a way of connecting that to something that we don't necessarily recognize as a traditional God, and it can still work. For people that really take offense to the God topic as such, we ask you to reflect on two things. One is that EDA is a program that is designed to help people find a spiritual solution. This is a spiritual foundation. So if you struggle with this, you can be sure that many people in EDA do either, on a pretty much continuous basis, or at least on an occasional basis, wrestle with this topic. So you're not alone. And the second thing is that, even people who really have zero interest in ever working with the spiritual concepts per se, can still find meaning and purpose and peace and perspective and freedom from an eating disorder by using the same basic principles. And so we do write about it in the steps. If you still struggle with it, write me and I will be happy to talk more about that with you. Okay, next one is I started a meditative practice in another program and I could really see how it helped, but somehow it doesn't seem to work with food issues for me. I'm still despairing that this is ever working. Did you ever feel like this? And what did you do to get past it? Open floor. Anybody want to tackle that topic? I can't be the only one. It's like, that's definitely a thing that I hear from lots of sponsees. So it's like, I get how this works for other people. I get how this works for other, substance abuse issues or for other types of challenges that people have, but it's not working for me with food, they say. And my answer to that is generally always the same. It's like, this is a program of progress, not perfection. It's not an overnight matter. This is a process of building up capacity by repeated and sort of not necessarily always hopeful results. we do find, it's like, look at the small microscopic shifts like Leslie was talking about. You were hearing Leslie, somebody that is in full recovery, that sponsors people, talking about it's the little micro shifts in attitude. That's what we get when we keep applying the stuff that we know works. It builds trust. It builds trust of ourselves in the process and in ourselves, and that matters hugely. So even if you're doing things that it seems like, I mean, when I first got to EDA, when we were working on this stuff, I was like, this isn't working. It was so frustrating. It's like, you know, I felt like, see, you told you so. You know, but it's just so hilarious because honestly, I was despairing of this. It's like it would go great for a little bit, and then I'd just be falling on my face, and I'd be like, well, that's it. It's just not working, you know. And it's like that impulse to want to be like, to just jump in with both feet and dismiss it all. That comes out of my like 12-year-old self or my 14-year-old self. It's just like, F it all. It's not working. And what I beg you to do is like bring the adult into that conversation. It's like, yeah, you fell down, pick yourself back up. You know that parts of this were working. What parts were working and what part just didn't? Because that's a really relevant thing to ask. So in working with people that are really new to this and are struggling with food, it's like, nope, you know, it's not about the food, it's a symptom. What's it really about? Like pull it apart. Look at, where did you let yourself down? You know, why was that the best option you could come up with? Because inevitably that's what it is. You know, if you're going back to food, it's because that is definitely your best option in the moment. There's a problem there. And it's going to have to do with your connection to the rest of the world and to this idea of whatever it is that's greater than you that brings you peace and perspective. So just keep at it. That's my answer to that question. Anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Were you saying that to me or
Right.
the other person who was talking?
No, to you. Go ahead.
Okay. For me, I meditated for a long, long time. And like the person who asked the question, it never did anything for my eating. But the problem was that I didn't believe that I could recover. And until I could see that I was giving myself messages that I couldn't recover, you know, sometimes it's just the wrong step. I had to go back to step 2, to the came believe part, and for me, it was coming to believe that I could recover. And that was turned a key for me. And then meditation worked.
How cool is that?
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing that. Gisele?
Well, I was just gonna put in there something that just struck me as for me, I tended to self-sabotage a lot, and so if I'm setting myself up to fail, somebody said something that just struck me and it might have been Emily, is those little bitty sprickets, you know, those little bitty things, those are huge. But if I'm I don't know, setting myself up to fail, I'm gonna, you know, think that it's got to be perfect, and I always did that. I always set myself up to fail, and that was my escape. And because I didn't really want to recover. I didn't want to swallow that hard pill that this isn't working. What I'm doing isn't working, and so I need to let my ego down and try something else that actually might work, even though I can't see the results. Because that's what I see. One of the questions is I don't know what's going to happen, and so I'm scared, and so I'm going to self-sabotage and say this didn't work. And so I like the little bits, and I love what you just said about what did she just say?
So didn't believe she could recover.
Didn't believe she could recover, but that's awesome, because that's a huge step. That's such a huge step in willingness. So thank you so much.
Anybody else on that question?
Yeah, this is Leslie. And
Go ahead, Leslie.
I love what everyone was saying. And one of the things that I love about EDA is exactly what you said, Annette, that in the beginning, you know, that it's right there in the big book, that the EDA big book, that going, there's no perfection. Like it's just about like small improvements. And so that's one thing that I think, that just reemphasizing that. And then two, I remember another thing that I like about EDA is that outside help is encouraged. And one of the outside help things I was given was that giving myself credit and getting back on track quickly are two skills that need to be practiced. But like, to give myself credit for the small improvements, like we just said, and then just to get back on track, like, just to dust myself off and get back on track. And then the third thing is that getting outside help, like having a good meal plan from a registered dietitian who has eating disorder recovery experience, is very helpful. Just to have like an outside eye to help me see those small improvements. Plus, of course, working with a sponsor who can also help with that a lot. So thanks.
That's so cool, Leslie. It's great hearing everybody's experience with this step. One last question, and then we're going to move on to read step 11 and say the step 11 prayer together. So here we go. The next one is, I want to share a practice that works with me, with people in my home group, but some have objected because my practice is specific to my religion. What do I say to people who are offended when all I'm trying to do is share my experience, strength, and hope?
This just goes back to what Annette was saying, that whatever works for you, whatever that spark, if that spark, that torch that you carry that worked for you, you're just sharing that with them. And if they don't, and it's something that the one woman who did the whole practicing these meditations, all these different meditations, and everybody found a different one that worked for them. That's the same kind of thing. If you want to bring something to a meeting, and and if it works for some people, great. And if it doesn't, then those people that object, bring something in that works for them, and just make it more of a sharing thing. And maybe that would help. I really like that idea of getting, bringing all those different meditations from the library and doing that. I really like that. And that could go into a meeting as well.
Sure, and I agree. It's so, if people are objecting, it may be because of the way you're carrying that message. Like, maybe you need to do this or that. That's probably not going to go over real well. Whereas, here's what works for me, generally nobody objects to. So it might be, an opportunity to look back at, like, how am I carrying this message, so that others can feel it, hear it, trust it. As opposed to like promulgating something that people like find objectionable. So some of it's about how, and the other parts just are, we really do encourage everybody to share what works for them. So if people are objecting to hearing about that because it's some outside something, well, that's really the EDA way, is encompassing, embracing, and not rejecting other ways of looking at things. So please just, if you're finding people being really rigid in your home group, that's probably a sign that they're needing to work on their stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to reassure people that, EDA is open to lots of ways of thinking, but we also don't want to make it so that there's only one right way. And so if you do have a home group that has chosen to adopt like a religious text, please make sure that your home group also mentions that this is something the group conscience has chosen that may not be consistent with the way other EDA groups are run, and please take what you can use and leave the rest. So with that, we're going to go on to big book pages 194 to 195. So will those of you who wish, please join us in saying the 11th step prayer. All right, so on the count of three, 1, 2, 3. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth,
that where there is doubt, I may bring
I may
faith.
bring faith.
That where there is
Where there
despair,
is despair,
I may bring
I
hope.
may bring hope.
That where there is shadows,
shadows,
I may bring
I may
light.
bring light.
That where there is
And where there
sadness,
is sadness,
I
I
may
may
joy.
bring joy.
Lord,
Lord,
grant
grant that I may
seek
seek
rather to comfort than to be
comfort
comforted. To
than
understand
to be
and
comforted,
to be
to understand and
understood.
to be understood,
Love
to
and
love
to be
and to
loved.
be loved.
For it is by
For it is by
self-forgetting that one finds
that one finds
self-fulfillment.
self-fulfillment.
It is by
It is by
forgiving that
forgiving
one is
that one
forgiven.
is forgiven.
It is by
It is
dying
by
that one
dying
awakens
that one
to
awakens
eternal
to
life.
eternal life.
Yay. All right. So step 11.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Thought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. You guys
Great
all
job.
rock. Wonderful job tonight.
Great.
So I wanted to check to next week's assignments are step 12 prep. Wow. But it's a lot of pages. Look at this. Okay, so read EDA Big Book Chapter 7, Working with Others, pages 199 to 237, and that doesn't include all of the stuff. Then also read workshop worksheets, pages 36 and 37. All right, so that's quite a lot of reading, but you know what? What a great time of year to be reflecting on how best to carry a message of hope and humility. So listen, I love you guys. I hope you have a wonderful week. It'll be the holiday before we speak again. And for some it's already been a happy holiday. I wish you all just a wonderful week, and just go in peace and enjoy.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Love
Annette.
you.
Same to
Annette.
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Happy holidays, everybody.
You too.
Happy holidays.
Okay. I'm done.
Well done.